Welcome. This is the question and answer series for Weeds, Art and Activism number 11 with Sant Khalsa. And she will be answering questions about her wonderful presentation. So we have a question from Aviva.
Oh, great. I'd love to have a question from Aviva.
So now you could stop sharing, maybe, and we can.
Okay, great.
All
There we go. Great. I can see everybody again.
Oh, she can't, says she can't unmute.
Oh.
Let's see. Maybe I can unmute you.
Maybe you can unmute her.
I'm not seeing where to do that.
I might be able to do it.
All right. Christina, you're a co-host, maybe.
I'm a co-host. Ask
her. That did it.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you.
Great.
So,
Hi,
so I have
Aviva.
a question for you, Sant.
Yes.
And it's a question I ask myself. So if it sounds challenging, it's because I'm challenging myself as much as you.
I love challenges.
Okay. So your images are beautiful, and I really appreciate your activism. But how are your images in themselves? How is your studio practice actually activist? I get it that you're being a witness. I get it that you're meditating. I do not get it that these beautiful images are activist. So explain that to me.
Okay, so I can use a couple of examples. Let's talk about the photographs of the Santa Ana River, and specifically, which is the project called Paving Paradise. So those photographs have been used by many nonprofits to talk about what's happening with the river, the impact that we as humans are having with the river, on the river, I should say, or to the river. Also, an exhibition of that work actually brought together all of the stakeholders within the Santa Ana River watershed, that, the different water providers, people who own the water rights, and led actually to the formation. It was at that gathering at the exhibition, it led to the formation of the Water Resources Institute at my university, the research center and an archive. That's where the discussion began. And it was because the stakeholders looked at the river in a way that they had not seen it before. So that's one example. Another example would be the Western water photographs, which are the project that's being published, Crystal Fresh Western Waters, as a book. So those photographs have been shown over the last 20 years from coast to coast, LA to New York. They've been shown in Europe. And people tell me that they see water in a very different way when they see those water store photographs, because it's not that it's just a water store photograph. It's that when you see them in the entirety and you see them, all those different words that these businesses are using to reference water, and you think about it in terms of these sort of odd places that people believe they're going to have a natural experience because they think, I'm going to buy water at the store and that therefore I'm doing the healthy thing. But then when you look at all the stores and you think about it as an entrepreneurial enterprise and water as commodity, it really changes your relationship with that place, and therefore your relationship with water. So I do see that the photographs do have an activist role. And I think, though, when I think of my own experience of making the photographs, I see them as more like activist research. In terms of they bring bring me to a level of awareness, especially the early photographs. You know, it wasn't until the late 80s and 90s that I really started to become more vocal about issues in my work. Through the 80s, it was really more me going out into the landscape, making photographs, and having an experience of place. And the more that I photographed and the more observant I became, the more I could see the problems. And that led me to distress signals, which was definitely, as I see it, an activist voice, bringing both the issues to the audience and then also coming up with some solutions. So I don't know if you want to kind of ask me anything more specific in terms of your question, but that would be my response. She says she can't unmute again. And I'd like to dialogue with her if possible.
Okay, I'm going to ask everyone to unmute.
It looks like something has happened. There we go. Aviva,
Aviva, can you?
Okay, so I don't know. I'm willing to think about what you said.
okay.
I I question what you're saying
Okay.
because what I hear is you're saying that you inspired people. Almost any art that's any good will inspire people. Is that
Okay.
the same as activism? Maybe it's a question of how you define activism.
Okay. I think that it is activism if there is an intended action on my part to have others do something different, to see something differently. And that's, I guess that's how I view activism. But I also have to say that I see myself, not that I see myself, I am very much an activist outside of my work as well.
Oh, I totally get that. I'm just
Right.
questioning the whole idea of labeling flat two-dimensional work, no matter how gorgeous it is or inspiring, as activism.
Okay. I think it depends
And we can
on,
agree to disagree on
no,
this.
I know, I know. I'm just saying, I just want to say a few things. I think that it depends on intention, and I think it depends on the way the work is contextualized. And I think that it depends on how the work is presented. I mean, there's so many factors. I also believe in the power of the photograph to be that a beautiful photograph can be very seductive, which I think in some ways can actually make it even more powerful to bring one's attention to an issue. So that's, but we can still disagree, of course.
I'll let someone else ask a question. Thank you, Sant.
Sure.
Oh,
Okay, Susan, did you have a question?
well, I just wanted to say that I think that I feel like your work is very activist, in that you use it to form different communities which get to work together. I mean, I can go watch, a Van Gogh exhibit or something, but communities aren't forming behind the work to change something. And you also bring to people's attention something that's happening in the world that they can't see themselves. It's the act of uncovering so that people can discover something, that was buried and attention wasn't paid to it. And that act of unburying something is an activist act. You wouldn't want everybody who comes to see your exhibit to go to the Mojave, to go to Joshua Tree, because Aviva and I have actually discussed this before, like how do you do a project, out in the world away from, cities and towns, and have people see it and understand it. And people actually, maybe it wouldn't have worked 100 years ago, but now photographs are very, people are more savvy to what it takes to make a photograph and to show you the photograph that, and so anyways, that's all I have to say is that this is the kind of discussion that can go on the whole night.
Yeah. No, Susan, I really appreciate what you said, that idea of how you put it, uncovering and bringing to someone's attention, which is, I said something similar to that, but I like the word uncovering, and just bringing to people's attention what I see often as something that may appear as commonplace or ordinary to them. Like, for instance, the river, they drive by the river all the time, but they really don't see the river. They really don't know what's going on the Santa Ana River and how they're impacting the river. But the photographs bring that attention to the way the natural world and our built environment is colliding, and the stress that is taking place. I mean, there's a lot of stress in the photographs. So I think it is about just bringing attention to issues.
So we have another question.
Sure. Hi, Leslie. Oh, she just went muted again. She can't unmute herself.
So can you unmute all?
See. We're using Minutia's system. And so I'm not familiar with it. She's not here, as you know, because her father died in Iran.
What did you do before to make everybody unmuted?
Okay,
I didn't
ask all to unmute. All right, there you go.
Okay.
So I was interested about what you said about working with the Army Corps of Engineers.
Yes.
And you said that you were very impressed. I'm going to say what I think I remember.
I didn't say
so if I
impressed.
proof it up, just correct me, okay?
Yes,
Okay, so I thought you said that you learned quite a bit from them.
I did.
And so I'm wondering, I was trained as an archaeologist and worked closely with the Army Corps of Engineers on the Mississippi River. I went to Tulane, and I found them completely incompetent. That's why it was really, this is a long time ago, and maybe we're decades apart, and but it's good to hear that you felt they knew what they were doing.
I didn't say that. I want to clarify. I didn't say I was impressed with them. I didn't use that word.
I did
I
misunderstand.
said I learned a lot from them.
Yes, you
Okay.
did.
And I learned a lot about water infrastructure and the way that government sees water, the way these different entities related to water. But I have to say that the head engineer on the project of the building of the Seven Oaks Dam, we befriended each other. Okay.
Okay.
And he shared with me extremely honestly about what was going on with that project. So, and I also had a number of experiences which I can share with you. I mean, there's much that he told me, and he allowed me to record our conversations. I would interview him, and he allowed me to record our conversations with the promise that I would never release that information until he was retired. Okay, so he's extremely honest with me about a lot of things. So I learned a lot. But I'll give you an example. There was a New Year's Eve, and I can't remember what year it would have been, but it was sometime in probably around I'm going to say it was probably around 93, maybe around that time. And it was New Year's Eve, and we were having one of our huge rain events in Southern California. And they had not, actually it was earlier than that. It probably would have been maybe more like 91. And it was raining so hard and the river was rising so quickly that basically all the work that had been done on the project at the dam in an entire year was going to be destroyed. Okay. And he and I were there with one other person. There were three of us because it was the afternoon of New Year's Eve. And there was a guy and a caterpillar, you know, one of those earth moving. And Terry King, the head engineer, is on the phone with the Corps engineer office in Los Angeles. And I can hear the conversation, okay? And they're telling him that he needs to stop the flood. Now I want you to imagine there's him, me, and one guy on a small earth-moving caterpillar, and they're telling him he has to stop the flood. And I will never forget what he said. He said, he used specifically the word she, said, she will do what she's going to do in terms of talking about the river. That's
right.
exact
Yeah, the
quote.
water is she. Yeah.
She will do what she's going to do. And after he said that, I said to him, so why did you use the word she? And he goes, well, I guess because it's something out of control. And we had such a dialogue about that after. Okay. There was another experience that I had with the Corps, which is I don't even know if this is public knowledge, but the Corps knows, so I will say it. Where it was during another big event. There was a photograph that I showed of a road missing on the river, like, and there was a dog with a pole, right? Okay. So the story about that photograph is that I'm standing on the side of the river, and at that particular area, this is between Redlands and San Bernardino around Alabama. I'm standing there and it is pouring, and I'm out there with my camera, and I'm wearing a Corps of Engineer hat because I had a Corps of Engineer hat. And I see these two guys, they're a little distance away from me, and they're standing and they're looking at the river, and I have no idea who they are. And they start walking towards me, and I hear them say to each other, oh, she's with the Corps, because I was wearing a Corps of Engineer hat. So they walked over to me and they said, so what do you think? Meaning like the river was, like, what do you think? And I said, oh, it's looking really bad. He goes, we're thinking about closing the bridge. What do you think? I said, I would close the bridge. So next thing I know, they call in to close the bridge.
There you go.
And because the water is rising. So they close the bridge. This is a bridge that goes like over a half a mile across the river. And within an hour, the entire bridge collapsed.
Oh,
The entire bridge collapsed. And it's a heavy commuter bridge. There would have been 100 cars on the bridge, and the bridge collapsed.
we owe you a lot.
The next day, I go walking. I'm up at the dam site, and they have this building where all the Corps of Engineers, where they work at the site where they're building the dam. And I peek in my head into the conference room just to see what's going on, because I was a regular there, right? And I see Terry King is holding like a little meeting, and I went, oh, I didn't mean to disturb you. He goes, oh, we're just talking about, the bridge collapsing. He goes, we're trying to figure out who closed the bridge because the mayor of Redlands, that's who one of the guys was that I talked to, and I didn't even know that it was the mayor of Redlands. The mayor said that they got the word from the Corps of Engineers to close the bridge. And I said, oh, I think that was me. And anyway, so it became sort of this like, a thing that the photographer professor from Cal State San Bernardino closed the bridge. So anyway. So I had
that would sort of fit with my memory. That's interesting.
okay.
Beautiful. So I think we've kind of reached our time, but we can.
We have another question. One more
Okay, another question.
Christina. Hi, Christina.
Sorry, I have to go. It was great. Thank you.
We'll close after this. Okay, I may have to unmute everybody. Asked to unmute. Try that.
Okay, now, so I would like it if you could explain something about the importance of the Joshua trees in preventing the desert from being developed and what that has to do with climate change. You started to mention it before we started today.
Yes, so I'm actually working on a large curatorial project on related to the Joshua Tree. And obviously I live in the town of Joshua Tree. I live in the Mojave Desert. The Mojave Desert is the only habitat for Joshua trees. And I don't know if you recall that about a year and a half ago, there was a major fire in the Mojave Natural Preserve, and over 1 million Joshua trees were destroyed by that fire. So it's very complex. So let's start with this. Rising temperatures are making it impossible. Rising temperatures and lack of water, because we've had so little rain. I mean, even rain here in the Mojave Desert is usually only 4 inches a year. We had like less than 2 inches of rain last year. Rising temperatures and lack of water are causing the Joshua trees to die. Also, because there's so little water, which means there's so little food for animals, the animals are eating the bark off the Joshua trees. That is also causing the Joshua trees to die. The other thing, so in terms of climate change, other issues is the only way for the Joshua trees to propagate is they need the yucca moth to fertilize them. Well, the yucca moth, it's becoming more difficult for their survival because of rising temperatures caused by climate change. So, and the Joshua trees are what we call a keystone species. So there are probably over 50 flora and fauna that have some relationship and dependency with the Joshua tree. So we're talking about a catastrophic, ecocide, basically, if we lose our Joshua trees. We believe that Joshua trees will survive at higher altitudes, but Joshua Tree National Park may not have any Joshua trees by the turn of the next century, or some scientists are saying much sooner than that. So the reason for protecting them is because the Joshua trees that are on private land, which 40% of Joshua trees are on private land, if those trees are not protected, then people will just cut them down to develop housing communities in areas where there really isn't enough water for them to have housing communities in the first place. Or cut them down to put in industrial solar or wind, thinking that the desert is just a place where, it's just an empty space, instead of realizing that it's such a rich ecosystem and an important carbon, place for the capture of carbon. So yeah, there's lots of issues here. I could go on. So protection of the Joshua tree is really, really important. Joshua trees are seen as, by the Chemehuevi, each Joshua tree is seen as a living deity. I just learned that from one of my Chemehuevi friends, and indigenous people are doing what they can as well to protect the Joshua trees.
Yes.
So how is carbon, what's the relationship between carbon and the desert?
The entire California desert is a carbon sink. So what that means is that they're just like a forest. There is a mycelium network under the desert and at the surface and right below it, and that sequesters carbon. And if you scrape the desert, like when people clear it to build a home, it releases the carbon and it can no longer sequester carbon.
Great. All right, thank you. This is a wonderful place to stop. And thank you so much, everybody.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm a big fan of WEED, and I think I've been a member. Oh my goodness. Hi, old friend. I think I've been a member for a long time. So.
Well, we were excited to be able to archive this important honoring of your work, of your life work.
Well, thank you. I so appreciate you inviting me, and I hope I met your expectations.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. So
Great.
Thank you all. We'll just stop the recording.
And Chuck, now you can say hi.